What a game. The games this weekend, my God. You know, this has been introduced with like a Steph Curry, throw it incomplete to Devontae Adams. Wow. I mean, that's all I can say is wow. What is going on, guys? Back for the Love of Sports podcast, and today we're going to be talking NFL free agency, and particularly the New England Patriots, and what a huge free agency splash it's been since this offseason started with them. I mean, today they literally signed anybody and everybody. It was unbelievable. It started early in the day where they got Matthew Judon from the Baltimore Ravens on a pretty big contract. That was a little surprising. You know, it's upwards of, 4 years, $56 million. $32 million guaranteed of that $56 million. I think Judon's an up-and-coming player. I think he's a very good edge rusher. I think that he definitely creates havoc in the backfield. You can even, he's a run stopper. Definitely can get to the quarterback. But the $32 million guaranteed I thought was a little high in my personal opinion. But today is, they want to talk about the offensive weapons they signed today. That's what it's all about. They signed Jonnu Smith, tight end from the Tennessee Titans, to I thought a very good contract, also upwards of $31.5 million guaranteed for him. That was a great signing. I think he's very similar to like a Darren Waller type build. Very athletic, fast tight end that can definitely stretch the field for them. I think that was the biggest thing that New England missed this entire season was any threat in the tight end game. They probably had the worst tight end group I think I've ever seen all time. They literally had nobody. I don't even know if they had 50 catches or more as a whole team from the tight end position, which is absolutely terrible. But, they filled that today with Jonnu Smith. I think he's going to do great there in New England. I think they use tight ends very well there for the most part, good ones. We've seen over the years with Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez, Benjamin Watson. They've used tight ends very well for the better part of, the last decade, even before that. And I think that Jonnu Smith is going to make a huge difference on that team. Also, I think the Nelson Aguilar signing that we just found out a couple hours ago was also a very good signing for them. He had a great season last year in Oakland. He tore it up. Actually, Las Vegas, whatever they are called now. The Raiders he was on. Had a great season, almost 900 yards. I watched him a lot of games last year. He's a very explosive receiver. His biggest problem, early in his career was his hands, and they've definitely shored up the last couple seasons. I think that's a big signing for them. He's not a number one receiver, but he's a decent number two or number three that I think can stretch the field, make contested catches. Also, I think he could have like 65 catches, in my opinion. I think that's a pretty good, legitimate thing that he could possibly get like 65 catches, 900 yards, maybe 6-7 touchdowns for the Patriots. Could be their number one receiver. We don't know yet. They also just signed Kendrick Bourne from the 49ers to a 3-year, $22.5 million deal. I actually think he's a pretty good receiver for the Niners last year. He's just always injured. And we haven't really seen him blossom because he's been consistently injured for San Fran. But I think he's actually a pretty good receiver. I've seen a couple games last year. He had really, really big games. I think a couple games he had over 160 yards or close to it. I remember that one specific game. I think it was a Monday night or Thursday night game. He tore it up. So Kendrick Bourne's definitely a pretty good player for them. He's going to slot into probably the number 3 receiver spot, but they needed weapons. That was the biggest problem. I mentioned Matthew Judon originally getting signed, which was a very good signing, I think. I think they overpaid a little bit, but the biggest problem for New England last year was the lack of weapons offensively killed them. And I think Jonnu Smith, Nelson Aguilar, and, we just said Kendrick Bourne are definitely going to shore up that receiving corps. And I think they're going to be much better overall. I think I don't think Newen's the answer there. They signed him back 1 year, $14 million. I think he's decent enough to, win maybe 9 games probably with this roster. I didn't think their defense was a huge problem last year. I thought they were actually pretty decent, pretty solid. And, they got a couple guys defensively, Judon, and they just signed Jalen Mills today too from Philadelphia, who's a pretty good cornerback. But I think their defense, their secondary is actually pretty good. And I think the biggest offensive thing, obviously, was receivers, tight ends. And I wanted them to go after like a Kenny Galladay or, a Curtis Samuel, someone that's, an elite receiver at this point in their careers. Aguilar is not that far off of, a couple guys. He's similar to Curtis Samuel, to be honest with you. I think he's very similar. Apparently, Curtis Samuel said no, and so did Kenny Galladay. Allegedly, that's the thing. They just did not want to play in New England. I don't know if that's because Cam Newton, where Samuel used to play with in Carolina. I don't know if Galladay really wants to go there and play for Belichick, which is another thing that players don't want to do a lot. And I don't blame the players because, we saw this season with Tom Brady in Tampa, him and Gronk, man, were tearing it up, loving life down there. It just seemed like they had no stress. It was like a stress-free area. Bruce Arians was totally different than Belichick, and that's just what it seems like to me. I teams or players do not want to play in New England, I think, because of Belichick. And I think it kind of goes against them sometimes. And who knows? Maybe if it wasn't Belichick there, I know it's so hard to say this because he's such a winning coach. It has probably the best career winning percentage by far. But, just the way he is, he's very, no fun, pretty much. You can have no fun in New England. It's just, very strict constantly. And I think a lot of players don't like that. And I think that scares away a lot of free agents. I think that personally. I don't know if that's the case. But, like I said, it doesn't seem like Galladay's going to go there. It doesn't seem like they're going to get anyone else because they made such a huge splash today. They did lose Joe Thuney to the Chiefs on a massive contract, 5 years, $80 million, which I thought was kind of a lot. But, he's a great offensive lineman, definitely needed because Kansas City lost the Super Bowl this year with no protection on Mahomes. I think that's great signing for them. And we'll see what happens with this New England team. But I think by far they made the biggest splash today in free agency, something they had to do. I kept preaching it that they had to go into this free agency and make a big splash by getting a tight end like Jonnu Smith. Nelson Aguilar, I'm a big fan of him. I thought he played great this year with the Raiders. I watched a lot of Raiders games this year. He was their number one receiver, I think, over anybody. Darren Waller was the tight end, definitely the best player on that team. But receiver-wise, it wasn't Henry Ruggs. It wasn't anyone else. It was Nelson Aguilar who was their best receiver, and he had a couple massive games. I remember that crazy Monday night, I think it was Monday night, Miami Dolphins game. Aguilar went crazy that game, had 7 catches, 160 yards. Terrific game by him, but I think those are the type of players that New England had. They literally had nobody. They had nobody last year at all. Their number one receiver, I think, was Jacoby Myers, who's a number 3 receiver probably at best. But, he didn't play that bad. He was kind of forced into that number 1 receiver role, but they just needed help across the board, and I think they got it today. So I think, rating today, I think I'm going to give them a B+. The reason it's not higher is because I think that Judon contract was a little high for me. I think he's a good player, and I think he's played great on Baltimore, but I don't think that was their biggest need. I still think they need a quarterback. I don't think Cam Newton's the answer. I know they signed him back for that 1-year deal, but I think they got to look quarterback in the draft, round 1, maybe Trey Lance, North Dakota State quarterback, or someone along those lines, because Newton is obviously not going to be there, in my opinion, after the season, unless he has a magical season like he had in 2015 with the Panthers, which I don't see that happening. I think his days in the NFL are limited because he's not the player he used to be. He's like a shadow of what he used to be. He has, not even close to the athleticism he used to have. His arm and his shoulder, in my opinion, is shot. I don't think that it's as strong as it used to be. I think he's had a lot of problems with it. And, watching a lot of games last year, the Patriots just looked out of sync. And obviously it's because Brady was gone. But even with Newton, he was just missing guys constantly, overthrowing them. It looked like they had no clue what they were doing, no identity on the offensive side of the ball. I predict the Patriots going 9-7 this year. I don't think they're going to be bad by any means. I think they'll hovering around 500. It's just going to be tough. They're in a tough division now. Buffalo Bills are a great team. There's no way they regress. I think, the Bills are legit. Josh Allen's legit. They're going to be, sky's the limit for them. And I also think the Dolphins are going to be good. I think that Tua, if he stays there, if they don't trade him for Watson or whatever it is, they're going to be a good team. They're one of those teams where I think they're going to consistently get better and better. And the Jets are another team that could be a lot better. They do have that number 2 pick this year in the draft, and I imagine them getting a quarterback or trading Darnold. I'm not sure what they're going to do, but they're also trying to get free agents like crazy. I read today Kenny Golladay could possibly go there. Curtis Samuel could possibly go there. The guys I named earlier could possibly go to the Jets. They're kind of in the same situation as the Patriots. They're probably worse across the board. Their defense is definitely worse, but they need weapons bad. And who knows, if they do get that number 2 pick, draft a quarterback, ends up turning out really well, I could see the Jets also, getting a lot better. So that's going to be a tough division. It's so out of the normal to say that, out of the ordinary. That division, AFC East, has been one of the worst divisions for I don't know how long. One of the most pathetic divisions, in my opinion. There was literally the Patriots for years, not even close. Like, the Jets were horrible for so long. The Dolphins were also kind of a joke. They were never like a playoff team. Now they are. And the Bills were, always decent, average at best. And all of a sudden, they're winning 13 games a year with Josh Allen, MVP candidate. So that's just a tough division. I think that's going to work against the Patriots. But, B-plus rating for today. I think they definitely got better offensively, which is the number one need by far. And I think some of the guys they signed defensively, even if you had to overpay for a couple of them, Jalen Mills, Judon, I think was decent enough where you can say they had a pretty successful day. In my opinion, I think they had the best day of free agency this far out of any team. So we'll see what happens with this New England Patriots team. But let me know what you guys think. Like, comment, subscribe. Voice your opinions in the comments. Let's hear it. Let's see where you New England fans are at. Where do you think these other players are going to go? It's going to be a very, very fun all season for the NFL. Like I said, guys, subscribe. I really appreciate the subscriptions lately. Trying to grow this channel more and more. So the feedback is appreciated.